storing memories to lose them again. You'll forget everything when this whole thing ends. You can't even predict what tomorrow brings, but don't lose track of living in the present.
Welcome to the Memory Distillery, everyone. I'm Anthony Verneri.
And I'm John Deck, and each week we will malt, mash, ferment, and distill our way through the spirits of our past in the form of long-loved movies.
And this week...
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
That's right. We are watching 2001: A Space Odyssey from 1968, directed by Stanley Kubrick.
Boom, 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 boom.
Is this our first Koob movie?
Yeah, it definitely is.
Oh, wow. That's exciting. This is one...
Oh, wait, didn't we do Snow Dogs?
We did not do Snow Dogs.
Okay, never mind then. That was a Cuba Gooding Jr. reference because you said Coob. And
we haven't done a Cuba Gooding Jr. movie either. So.
Yeah. So there's a lot to look forward to this year.
Probably 10 or 11 years since I've seen this one. I think I've actually read this more recently than I watched it. I've always loved the book series, and I go back to it every probably 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, it's absolutely one of my favorite movies in its execution and the vision, and the so far ahead of its time. Just it's mind-blowing. I don't know if you've ever watched any, I think there's a documentary about it. There's definitely commentary tracks laced around it. There's a lot of history.
Read articles about the history of it.
So there's so much going on with this that just as a masterwork in having a vision and executing it, even when you don't have the resources or they don't even exist to make,
in 1968, which is a feat in and of itself.
Yeah. And even filmed probably at least a year or two before then. So, mid 60s, having all the space exploration and computers on your spaceships that didn't even exist at that point, and the leaps and assumptions made about what would be required to do the things they were trying to do. Gosh, there's so much to geek out about. But in terms of just a movie itself, I think at least the last 2 times I've seen this have been when I've come across it, either on the Sci-Fi Channel or HBO or somewhere, and it's been middle of the night, and it's I get sucked in and I start watching it, and all of a sudden it's 1 or 2 in the morning, and I'm just my eyes are glazed over, and I feel a sense of timelessness and this. I know there are some people who would describe the movie as just being boring. In fact, something kind of funny, I wanted to look up because I was trying to remember exactly what year it was released. And so I started to type in 2001, and one of the autocompletes things was, why is 2001: A Space Odyssey so boring? So people are Google searching that for some reason. Probably, I'm assuming, maybe younger folk who haven't seen it before, got all hyped up on it. And all this talk about it being so great, and then they watch it and they're just bored out of their mind. But I do really appreciate the difference between something being boring and being slow. It could be slow and captivating, or it could be slow and boring. It could be all of these things. But most certainly in this case, I would put this movie as slow but extremely captivating.
And I think that that's going to be something that we kind of look out for, because I don't necessarily remember this having pacing issues or having moments where I'm man, I wish this movie would just fucking end. But now I'm looking and I see a runtime of 240, and it's that's a tough one to kind of get your head around. I'm going to be spending 160 minutes watching 2 dudes and a computer in space. It's something that you really have to kind of prepare yourself for.
Yeah, you're kind of do I want to watch 2001: A Space Odyssey, or do I want to watch Elf twice? It's But you do definitely get something different out of each. I think it's going to be a fun experiment, watching this with an analytical eye, knowing we're going to discuss it again. You said it was maybe 10 years since you've seen it, whatever you said. I wasn't paying
something
attention.
Like that, yeah. 10 or
you
11. You don't pay attention to me
right.
at all. So.
I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next, and that is to say that it's been at least 5 years for me. Maybe closer to 7 or 8 now that I think about it, because I can't believe it's 2021 already. But like,
Fuck.
Yeah. So I think it was probably about 7 or 8 years ago the last time I saw this. But I remember the first time I saw it when I was much, much younger. It did like nothing for me. I was probably one of those kids being like, that boring. I probably didn't even watch it all the way through. I can't even remember. And then it wasn't like till college that I rediscovered it and just loved what I was seeing. And then as I moved on and discovered all about the making of it and the details behind, how it all came together, it just sold it. So yeah, I'm expecting and hoping to have a wonderful, positive experience. But if not, you guys will all be the first to hear about it.
It's funny that you say like you like had this memory of not particularly liking it in your youth before you like went off to college or whatever. I don't remember necessarily even having an opinion about it. I remember watching this with my dad, and like I'm remembering bits and pieces, but not really gluing everything together. Like I didn't really understand the monolith, and I didn't really understand that sort of thing, and like the inner workings and really what was happening with Hal. And then I read the books, and I was like, oh shit, this is like. This has a lot more depth to it than I really gave it credit for. And I think I first read this when I was probably 13 or 14, and then went back and watched it. And I was like, oh wow, this is actually like pretty fucking brilliant. So I think we've gushed enough about the memories that we have about it. Why don't we go watch this? It's currently streaming on HBO Max and on the Turner Classic Movies app, so you can get it in one of those two spots. Or you can rent it on one of the various streaming rental services. Or if you have it in your personal library, you can watch it there. We're going to go watch it. And when we come back, we are talking the Space Odyssey 2001. John, are you ready? Got it in one. I held on to that.
You pull it out of the ashes. And the answer is yes, I am.
Then let's do it.
So, all right, we can talk about Odysseys.
Yes, an Odyssey in space, everybody. How we doing? John, how did you fare this go around with this very long Stanley Kubrick movie?
This was the best Christmas movie we've watched yet.
Agreed. Arguably the most Christmassy.
Arguably.
Because of the lights.
And because you like to argue stupid things. So
I do like to argue stupid things.
I could see
if you look at my Facebook feed.
Yeah, well, no thanks. I've made it clear exactly what topics I feel you should be discussing on social media, and I've yet to
Which
see
my
you.
wife agreed with, and I take exception to that. But anyway.
Hey, just because we know what's best for you doesn't mean you should argue.
Well,
but we're not here to talk about that. 2001: A Space Odyssey, which we all know is the sequel to Homer's
Odyssey.
Yeah. I think it's weird that there were 2,000 other versions of this tale, but it's kind of like a game of telephone, and that's why the movie doesn't really have the same feeling as following Odysseus on his journey against things. Although I guess you do have a Cyclops as a protagonist or antagonist.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is like you go 2,000 episodes before they even get to space. Like, come on. Obviously, there's been space travel for if Pan Am is in the skies in space. There's got to be some space travel here, and it took you to 2,000 episodes to get to the Space Odyssey. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, I mean,
get it together.
I think there's a box set edition where it doesn't even have all, 1,999 other Odysseys, but it has like 70. And each one's about, I'd say they're really about 4.5 hours each. So if you do the quick math, that's a lifetime of viewing.
Yeah,
I would not recommend it.
But if you get the microfiche versions, it's pretty quick.
Yeah, and I usually
it's only half a lifetime.
If you watch them at 1.1 speed, then it's only 90% of your life that you use. Anyway, we're getting off track here. This was the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick Jr. Kubrick Gooding Jr. I feel like I'm stalling because I'm a little intimidated about talking about this movie because on the one hand, I enjoyed watching it. I usually do. On the other hand, I don't really know. I have one solid talking point for this entire episode, and it wasn't the sequel thing. My one point that I feel everything else is just going to be off the cuff, but the one thing I was really thinking about was, is this a sci-fi movie? Is this a study of philosophy? Is this just motion art? Like, what is the movie? What's the point? What's going on? And I know what it is.
Okay.
It is a meditation on food.
Oh, interesting. Because I had commentary about the food, but go ahead.
The monolith, as it's called, is like, think of it as like an alien consciousness merged with Emeril Lagasse.
Okay.
And he's like, bam! And he, it is the progenitor of good food direction. Because you have these ape man things.
Yeah, our ape-like ancestors.
Sure. You have
4 million years hence.
And we see them, and they're just eating bits of weeds and scrub in the African desert. They're playing around and taking naps with tapirs or whatever, but they're eating twigs and grass and weeds or whatever they can get their hands on. And this monolith, he's taking a look, and he goes, bam! And he's like, and he shows up. And the second he shows up, they're eating steak.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that. Like, it's pretty solid. I was looking at it from a more kind of macro evolutionary thing, but you're getting micro here and just going.
It's micro.
This isn't
macro.
evolutionary. It's this strictly culinary.
It's the one thing that was probably scrubbed from, there were a lot of things scrubbed from the original version. This movie has a rich history of being edited down.
Sure.
But you know how when they go to the moon base and there's like the Howard Johnsons and
the Hilton,
yeah, and like the Bell phones, and it has all the branding and stuff like that. Like, I feel that there were probably a lot other call outs to different like food restaurant chains, fast food chains, whatever you might have, whatever it might be. And I think
they got a Bob's Big Boy up there on the space station.
Yeah, like there was a lot of intentionality originally in this little abstract piece of filmmaking to get it, funded by these restaurants, and they kept turning down our boy Stanley, and so he just transformed the entire point of the movie to turn, a middle finger to corporate food, whatever form that takes. And so throughout this movie, they really spent a lot of time. We have a lot of time to spend, but there's a proportionate, almost uncomfortable amount of time watching people eat uncomfortable, non-appetizing seeming food substances.
Yeah, and like preparing them even.
Yeah,
they're on
themselves.
Yeah, so like they're on the ship, and yeah, he burns his hand taking the food out of the I guess cooker. I don't know if I can't imagine it's a microwave because I'm pretty sure they're on metal dishes, but like this movie spends an almost agonizing amount of time on the minutia of the moment, whether it's cooking the food or watching an interview in which the two main human characters on the bridge of this ship have participated in, or an entire birthday greeting from one of their the crewman's parents. Like, it's
the things they did to simulate, like, who's ever gonna believe that you could like just watch, you know, a news television show on a tablet? I mean,
and not just one but two. Like, both of them
Yeah.
are watching on their own tablets, and they have it synced up. And it's when this comes out, it's 1968. Like you had mentioned earlier, when they're filming this, it's 1965 or 66 or 67. So, like, you have a movie that is easily 3 or 4 decades ahead of its time in terms of like technological advances and what user interfaces are going to look like and what we're going to be doing in the year 2001. Like, yeah, we didn't get to tablets quite yet, but I'm literally reading my notes on a tablet about the same size as what Dave and Frank had in front of them.
yeah, I'm saying I think 2001: A Space Odyssey is about food. Is that what you were saying? Because like once
Yes,
again, whenever you're talking, I'm kind of
yeah.
thinking about other things.
Right, and more importantly about the point that you had already made.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah. So, but the food thing, yeah, is super important. For reasons previously stated.
So, like, just to get to the meat and bones of general ideas, we oftentimes come back from one of our viewings, and I automatically talk about if I like it or don't like it. We get into that. We, hit some of those things, and it almost feels like my feelings about the movie are irrelevant, like whether I liked the movie or not. For the record, just because it's fun to keep records, I did like it. I enjoyed it. I kind of reveled in the slowness of it because, a lot happened since we talked about this Tuesday, and today on the Thursday we're recording. A lot of franticness, a lot of craziness, and it was kind of fun to just force myself to take 2.5 hours or whatever and just kind of float. The only thing would be better if I was in like a little suspended animation, like float pod or something here while I was watching this, which actually would be pretty awesome. But it was a nice little, set myself aside from current events and escape, and it did that well. And I got to kind of just marvel, like at what you were saying, the meticulousness of it all, the tiny little minutia of every everyday movement of the simulations of gravity and the lack thereof, of the all trying to think of all the different ways in which at the time it was probably mentioned in sci-fi books and things, but there was nothing at all similar to the concept of something revolving in space to simulate gravity. That was not a concept that was just accepted or understood. I can imagine when first watching
at least
it.
Not by the general public.
Right.
I'm sure in scientific circles, yes, that was absolutely a thought process.
It had never been depicted before visually, so when you're first watching it, you have to be thinking, wow, what a weird choice to just go with these angles of the people walking in circles and rounds. But like knowing that they did this at a time when doing wire work and painting out the wires is not some like 2-second process that's digitally enhanced, and like all the things that they try to do, even just the exaggerated movements with their Velcro stick-on shoes or whatever those were, like if you wanted to nitpick, about how things would perform in gravity or not, like what a pointless argument. But yeah, not everything was perfect, but they were really tuned in and really paying a lot of attention to that, to the point where the classical music that was used as the score, just it so perfectly matches up and tells these stories that you aren't necessarily thinking about, will they land okay? It's not that kind of tension. It's just a different kind of tension, almost like when we're watching Rocky Horror, right in the middle of him saying anticipation. It's like you're right in that middle zone where you're waiting for the the pod to drop, so to speak. And so yeah, so I enjoyed the movie in the process, but it really was kind of more like a silent movie in a sense. It was almost like you were free of the constraints of what normally happens in movies, which is you have like, you know, plots and character development and like dialogue. Like this has a little bit of those things, but it feels very obvious that's not the point at all.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because last night as I'm watching this, my wife, who really doesn't have a lot of interest in sci-fi, was in the kitchen and I was in the living room, and they're sort of connected by a wall, and she's doing her thing and I'm doing my thing. I'm watching this movie, and it gets to it gets to the scene on the Pan Am flight before Dr. Floyd gets onto the space station, and my wife chimes in and goes, "Is there any dialogue in that movie?" Because it's been half an hour, 45 minutes. Like we go almost 45 minutes, I think, before there's there's a single word in English, at least spoken, by anybody.
And I just thought, you know, when you know you do get to the moon before, you know, the reveal of the second coming of the big thing, monolith, I guess. Is that the official name for it?
Yeah, it's called the monolith.
Sure,
yes.
we'll call it that anyway, even if the whole rest of the world already has. But before it's revealed again, you know what happens? You have that conversation with the various doctors, and the one like turns down their invitation to join them in drinks, and like there's this, you know, there's some tension there, and it's reminds me almost a little bit of with the ape people, you know, pre-human ape primates, when they're like having confrontations between their clans and stuff. So you have another, and that was around a watering hole, and this is kind of like a lounge area with drinks, like a watering hole. Like, so there's certain scenes that are repeated and mimicked, and then towards the end, before you hit the galactic embryo, like you have where he is seeing himself and he's, you know, going through different points of a timeline, and he shatters the drink cup. So it's like, again, drinks and waters, and being, you know, like there's conflict, and there's around meals and drinks. And I really feel like I'm like this close to having some sort of a understanding that was never meant to be. Yeah. Whew, I hope a computer isn't near me and sees what I'm doing. And oh man, my webcam, it's glowing red, and I don't like the way it's looking at me. This always happens during this podcast where I almost get murdered. So what's your favorite thing about this movie? It could be a scene, it could be acting, it could be anything. Like what if you had to like try to pick one thing, what would your like favorite thing be about this movie?
Man, that's a tough question.
That's what I do.
There's so much that happens in this movie, and it's not necessarily easy to pin that kind of thing down. I guess if you really kind of put my back to the wall, I'd probably have to say the shooting of the movie itself, like the actual the way that they position cameras and the way that they depicted space and the way that they used the space on the ship and showed like how they move throughout the ship, whether it be on these outer bulkheads that become floors that are you know, cylindrical and go the circumference of the ship, or like they have to climb a ladder up from that to get to the center part that I imagine they float through or crawl through like a Jeffries tube. The choices that they made with depicting what they believed the future of travel was going to be like, I thought was fascinating and extremely well done. And granted, 2001, the year, has come and gone. But I think that more than likely, as we, as a species and as a planet, start to venture out amongst, the other celestial bodies in our solar system, and hopefully beyond our solar system, we will start to kind of have we'll start to take elements of that design from what we saw in this movie, as far as like simulating gravity and comfort and cooking and things like that.
I mean, maybe we just need to get to a point where we can uncover the aliens' instruction manuals for us to advance to those levels, because the tech we have now, we're not going to get very far out of the solar system, at least not during our standard lifetimes.
No, absolutely not. But
so that's
there's
what we need to dig more on the moon.
Exactly, and find a monolith
bring
that
magnets.
will help us to cook better, and or evolve, and yeah.
I think I'm not talking about a sequel to this movie, but one thing I think when I'm reimagining,
there is a sequel to this movie.
No, I'm not talking about 2002, another Space Odyssey. I'm talking about how would I improve 2001, and I'm not talking adding in a plot. I'm not talking adding in, a romance or anything lame like that.
Wait, so then are you talking about
Dreamcasting? No.
Every time.
Every time. It's great. It's a fan favorite. No, I'm somehow I got off track and I can't imagine how that happened. Let's see, 2001. Oh yeah, how to make it better. So I can't remember if I've talked to you about this on the podcast or anywhere else, but are you familiar with the TV show The Detectorists?
No.
So it's a BBC comedy type show. It's wonderful. I absolutely love it, but it's really the two main characters and other people in it, but they're enthusiastic detectorists, people who utilize metal detectors to just go through the countryside looking for things.
Okay.
The show, is a lot of things, but it's not much more than that in terms of what you see. So a lot of what takes place is them out in the middle of these beautiful fields, just slowly swaying back and forth, looking for things, and they have conversations, and other things happen, and there's it's a great show. I'm not going to get into that, but the point is that a lot of it is very zen. A lot of it's just nice, peaceful, and fun, along with quirky, weird happenings and characters, and it's hilarious. But if you take that element and you want to take the open space of 2001, I could see an intersection there where you have a movie, but you inexplicably have a 45-minute cutscene of just two guys on the surface of the moon slowly looking with metal detectors everywhere, and then they come across the monolith. I feel that's an opportunity they weren't thinking of back then. But that's my plan for a small improvement, even without Dreamcasting.
Well, but that would be on brand for this movie.
Just a little better.
Would totally be in the same way that we had the 35 minutes of the Ape Men, or the at no less than 25 minutes of space travel just to the space station and the moon. The galley scene, or the changing out of the component on the communication array, all of that is part and parcel to what you just talked about. So.
Yeah, the editing in a standard movie, every scene you just explained would take between 30 to 90 seconds.
Yes.
And in this movie, each one of those is somewhere between 15 to 35 minutes.
Right. And then the rest would be filled in with car chase scenes.
They would be. And in this, you have a man shot from a small floating spaceship into a tube. I don't know what you call it. So the interesting of course, on the most basic level, the film again being released in, 68 or whatever, and famously taking a while to premiere because of a lot of different things, including eccentricities with the director. Who knew? But like wanting
Stanley Kubrick?
Yeah.
What?
Working on different edits, and like there being just a bunch of different things. I know, I can't remember any of the details except to say like one of the, I don't know if it's the guy that played Dave, but one of the actors, like he finished and released another movie in the time he got done filming this before it was released. So like,
holy shit.
So like between when it was originally written, conceived of, and filmed, and then when it was released, it sounds like it was at least like a year and a half. So yeah, I'm in my head, I'm guessing that this was probably filmed around 65, 66. And the interpretation of Arthur C. Clarke's book, but combining it with all the,
not just interpretation, he co-wrote the screenplay
right,
for this.
But like that collaboration, I should say, combined with the depiction of what they did with special effects to simulate all the things and how they would look. This all took place in the mid 60s, and the moon landing was in 69. And so to have a beautiful looking moon landing occur, with the effects that were available, I don't know, 1965, that's what, like 100 years ago?
Something like that, yeah.
75. I can't do math, but I think it's 75. But at any rate, like, it's no wonder that there's credence among, people who think the moon landing was faked and all, because it's like, yeah, I mean, look at that footage from that moon landing. That doesn't even look as good as like the one from the movie 2001. Like it's, why didn't they just make it look better? Or, I don't know. But so it's really interesting that to have all these things, like, yes, we had been to space, but even the very opening scene before we get to the ape people, just seeing the curvature, of the earth, and like just seeing the view of things, like it's like, this just looks good. This looks is kind of an amazing thing just to look at, knowing it was made so long ago. And so yeah, I'm kind of fascinated by all of that. It's it just seems like, I mean, I know it's not like there aren't other movies made that are, that look really cool or have good things about them, but maybe aren't necessarily celebrated as much as this. But yeah, I think just the entire process made me appreciate the time it was made, meaning the point in timeline, the years wherein it was made, as well as that commitment to just making this vision come true without being beholden to what was expected of a movie back then or now. And just to think of the doors open for other artists to do things that were kind of weird is kind of cool to me.
Well, and to add on to that, like, you'll have, and this happened in a lot of different movies, but you'll have like space-based films from like the 50s and 60s that look completely, and even the 70s that look completely different and like almost a weird hellscape. Because one thing that people don't realize is, like, back then you didn't have photographs of the Earth from outside the Earth. You didn't have you didn't have photos of the Earth from the moon. Like, you had what artists and cartographers had put together. And so you end up with these hand-drawn renderings of what a spaceship would look like, and what a planet would look like, and what the landscape on that planet would look like. A good example is When Worlds Collide, which we will do one day on this show. But the entire everything from that movie is hand drawn, basically. Everything that isn't a scene with a human being in it.
Yeah, and I know it's not a fair comparison, but if you look at, like, say, Star Trek, like the original series, which was made basically around the time that this was being made.
Yeah, I think it came out in like 60, 65, 63, something
like
like
66. But at any rate, it kind of ran towards the end of the 60s. So it's right in that window. But like, you know, this is a TV show of, I don't want to say low budget, but not a huge budget. Not like, you know, 2001 at the time spending.
Oh, I mean, it's cardboard sets and blinking lights.
Yeah, but like the acceptability of that as a backdrop was, you know, totally fine. You know, because movies, TV shows, like most things kind of verged on that campiness and it was just accepted because how could it not be? Like you can't just realistically have an alien. You know, you can't just have, you know, gravity not working. You can't, you know, so all those things you were just kind of trained to be like, no, a lot of this is going to just take place in my imagination. And
suspension
I'm
of disbelief.
Yeah, exactly. And this movie just wants to just shirk off that whole idea of disbelief and make you painstakingly observe that this is really happening. And then when things happen that they can't be explained and the mystery of what's going on in this movie, which of course is all about food, but they probably didn't realize it at the time, you know, that idea of challenging the human brain to assign meaning to something that may or may not be there. Like, it's just such a fascinating process. Now, you know, I'm thinking, yeah, you may have a question or two when you're talking about, you know, things for me for this movie, but one of the things I was thinking about that, you know, I did want to ask you is, you take this movie, you take 2001: Space Odyssey, which is the name of this movie. Even people who didn't understand the movie, even people who didn't like the movie in the past and present, I believe, like, most seem to have, they kind of acquiesce that this was like a beautiful looking movie, you know, that it had stunning effects and a presentation, and it was just something to marvel at just looking at it, even if they thought this movie's no good because it's boring and there's no plot and it's worthless. So with that in mind, I wanted to just see if you had, if this conjures any other movies you can think of that are just not necessarily any good as a movie, but just have something kind of beautiful or something stunning or something amazing special effects wise, something that sticks with you, even though maybe it's not worth watching the movie for because you don't like it, but the effects and the visual tone and the cinematography, it like sticks with you.
Man, that's a tough one. You know, I'll actually say this, because I just watched it because it just came out. I didn't particularly like the story of Wonder Woman 84, but I think that there was a lot of beautiful landscapes, and I thought that it was very well shot. It was like the effects were pretty good. I wasn't necessarily bought into the story, or even to a much smaller extent some of the acting that happened, but like just watching it and like seeing the visuals and like especially the beginning with when they're in Themyscira, and I'm not gonna ruin the plot or anything, but the whole Themyscira scene, like I thought was great, but on the whole did not necessarily love the movie.
Yeah, so. Don't make me get into judging Wonder Woman 84 in a 2001 podcast. Short version, it's garbage. It just is. It's not good. It has a moment here or there, but that's not enough to qualify it as anything close to being a decent movie. Anyway,
correct.
But your answer,
I think one other example I could give is Thor: The Dark World.
Okay,
because that is a very beautiful film, but it is also garbage in the story department.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I and valid observances, of course, you know, that you find the beauty in these things. Like I mean, I think there are just tons of examples, unfortunately, where this happens, where you have a mixture of talent, you have people visualizing and realizing aspects of a story in a beautiful way, but then it bangs up against the wall of a bad director or bad writing or bad actors or just not coming all together, not being edited, whatever is causing these things to fall apart. Sometimes you get the visuals right. And like, I thought, I started off thinking primarily sci-fi just because my brain was on a 2001 kick. And I think I mentioned this when we were discussing movies a while back, but the movie Sunshine by Danny Boyle is just, to me, like almost like a spiritual, not predecessor. What's the one that comes after? Successor. Yeah. Good wording.
But what I'm here for.
Visually and tone wise, and a lot of that's going on, and some of the pacing, but it's just gorgeous and beautiful for at least, 2/3 or 3/4 of it. I really love that movie. But then I was just like pushing myself a little further and thinking about like movies that I really didn't really like at all. And I think of like Prometheus. Did you see that?
I still haven't watched that.
Well, for any faults that you may or may not have with it, I think you or most people would just have a hard time arguing that it's not gorgeous to look at. It just really, I felt, just so many different levels, was just absolutely beautiful and a trash movie. Or the movie, even like on a more subtle level, like the movie Passengers with Jennifer Lawrence, Chris Pratt.
I keep meaning to watch that, even though I'm told that it like is dumb and is not a good story. I keep wanting to see it.
I would not put it in the category of like outright just horrible. Then again, I only watched it once. If I rewatched it, maybe I changed my mind. But it definitely has issues. It definitely has problems.
Michael Sheen's the bartender,
right?
That, right?
How can you not like that? That's exactly correct. And it just has some beautifully visually rendered scenes and things that are very memorable as well. So it's like, whether it's perfect or not, it's not. Is it even good? Probably not. But it does just, and besides having Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence, who are both very attractive people, you have this like spaceship and everything that's going on that like is just rendered and done in just a beautifully visually appealing way. So it's of course 2001 wasn't the first movie to try to do something beautifully in film, but I feel like it opens doors. It creates benchmarks that you can look back, through, from this film on, especially within the sci-fi, or just sci world.
I would say it's like, because there's this kind of subcategory to sci-fi, like hard science fiction, where it's like this is not something that is in any way, shape, or form far-fetched. Like, we eventually could get to this point.
Yeah.
So
you get that, if Christopher Nolan was making movies in the late 60s or something, he probably would have really loved this, because he likes making everything kind of dark and gritty and realistic, no matter how fanciful it may be. But yeah,
Dave.
Yeah. I'm afraid I can't do that, Dave. That's dreamcasting.
Hal, I can't understand you, Hal.
Christian Bale as Hale, as Batman as Hale. Swear to me, Dave. Anyway,
Hal, I can't tell what you're saying, Hal.
No, that's right. Because no, okay, I'm sorry to everyone listening who was hoping this would end soon, but now I know we weren't going to get into dreamcasting. But when I'm thinking about some of the main characters in this and cross-referencing that with the Christopher Nolan universe of Batman, like, just to think, if you have HAL 9000, do you want a Batman voicing that? Do you want that transition? Or do you want something that goes a little like this? Dave, I can't hear that. This. And that, of course, was Bane as HAL 9000.
Oh, I thought you were... I thought you were doing Alfred. Oh, man.
Oh my God, you're gonna kill me.
That's amazing. I was absolutely convinced that you were doing Michael Caine as Alfred just then. Oh, that's fantastic.
Well, clearly my skills in impressionistic arts have not faltered since the passing of Sean Connery. I'm glad I can keep that torch going.
Rest in peace, King.
Exactly. Chadwick Boseman?
Yep, him too.
Man, I can't believe humans keep dying.
Yeah, it's a flaw.
Man, our show's taken a dark turn.
It has taken a very dark turn. I do get some of the complaints, not to completely switch gears, but I'm going to. I do get some of the complaints about this being long. Like, we've talked already kind of at length about how much exposition there is and how much time they spend on the little things. And this is not a short film. This is 160 minutes, at least the version that's on HBO Max right now. I'm sure there are longer versions out there if you really dig deep and find them.
How many minutes long should a movie that takes 400,000 years be, Anthony?
Well, I'm not saying that it should be any shorter than it is. What I am saying is that I understand that some people have complaints about it and why they have complaints about it. But that sort of exposition, that sort of detail, that attention to detail is Kubrick 101. Like, if you look at his other stuff, if you look at Full Metal Jacket, like, he spends tons of time on their Marine Corps boot camp and then tons of time of them just trudging through the jungle. Like, there's a lot going on.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I mean, if you look at, Eyes Wide Shut, if you look at The Shining, if you look at,
absolutely.
There's so much just building of atmosphere and of establishing tension. Like, that's a hallmark of his, no doubt.
Yes.
And so this is really nothing different except for the possible exception that there is not much of a payoff in terms of plot or character here.
No, there's a lot of freaky psychedelic shit at the end, and that's more or less what you get.
Which, I mean, again, with this being in the 60s and all, like, how can you be alive at that time not going with this movie just tripping like crazy?
Oh, yeah. You've got to be
it.
Just dropping all kinds of acid. No, yeah, this has got to be a favorite amongst people who are into psychedelics for sure. What there is one other thing you asked. What I really liked about this movie. There's one other thing, and it's not nearly as big, but I do like that they addressed toilet usage in this movie, and to the point where Dr. Floyd is reading the placard outside the bathroom to make sure that he understands how this zero gravity toilet works before he goes in and takes a shit.
I mean, all comes down to food once again.
Once again, yep, in and out. I do have one final question for you. Or maybe two.
Oh, geez.
Maybe two. So the first one is a little more philosophical. So the monolith, despite being a culinary tool, is also arguably an evolutionary tool. Like, the ape men touched it and learned the use of tools and were able to, beat away or kill the other, kill the other ape men who took the watering hole from them. Did the monolith also change Hal, or was he always destined to become so self-aware that he'd protect himself at all costs?
I think the monolith definitely changed Hal. Because previous, we have these perfect computers, these twin computers that have never made mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
And as we find, in the powering down and or killing of Hal, aside singing Daisy creepily, we also find this hidden message, and so there's like some hidden knowledge, stuff that Hal was already privy to. So he'd had exposure, tangentially at least, or some connection to this monolith, and I think maybe the idea is that this monolith was something unexplainably powerful, that has the ability to, maybe it was the first iteration was presented to these ape men or whatever, and maybe it can only really be grasped fully in a proper way by like biological entities or something. So artificial intelligence is going to still be impacted by it, but it'll be like corrupted because the AI, this computer, doesn't have the faculties to evolve freely, to change its way of thought necessarily. So it still has a bunch of zeros and ones and a bunch of parameters. It just, you get your wires crossed, and then it can no longer believe that what it's doing is different or imperfect. And, and all the things that happen from then out, I do believe are a result of it trying to resolve what it considers a paradox, because it doesn't understand that it was impacted, whatever you want to call. So yeah, I definitely tend to think that would be the case.
Yeah, I like that answer a lot. Have you seen the sequel to this, 2010?
I know I did a real long time ago, and I remember not having as much of an impact on me at all, and I haven't read the books, so okay. So now knowing that it didn't really have a big impact, as you probably don't know the plot, what does the sequel to this movie look like? What should it, you mean? Because I can't remember it.
Yes.
Okay. Picture it. Sicily,
and by the way, to our listeners who have read the books and are big fans of the Odyssey series and or 2010, forgive John. Right.
So all one of you who have just now acknowledged that I'm clueless, then I can move on. This is how the sequel opens. You're underwater. Okay. For about 21 minutes.
So you're dead?
No, you don't know. I'm not saying you, the human, are underwater. I'm saying the camera opens.
The camera is underwater. Okay.
Yeah. And then let's just say that maybe you think you're in space. Maybe you think you're a little, solar system baby embryo floating through space, but you're not. You're actually a camera underwater, and you think you're seeing stars and twinkly lights, but you're seeing like sea life and things underwater. Then camera pans out, and it's not just little phytoplankton and glowing algae and stuff like that. It's Atlantis. Bam.
Oh.
And we're ushered into Atlantis by merfolk. And as they float down and get in there, no talking, of course. They're just swimming.
Of course.
And as they get down to the part of the city, like you see like all these fanciful like mechanical contraptions, like moving gates and pushing things through the water and all this stuff happening. And as you cut to the throne room, and again, this is you're in 30 minutes in, you cut to this grand throne room with a Neptune-like figure, trident and everything sitting in this throne, and right behind him is the monolith. And he looks up, and you can see like way up on the surface, that's like there's like a solar eclipse or something happening. And then bam, flash cut, we're in a bathtub. It's 2029, and there's like a kid playing in the bathtub. I should warn the viewers that my description of the sequel to 2001 is going to be more boring and last longer than the actual first movie. So, if we're about 50 some minutes in now, you might want to fast forward to like the 2.5 hour mark if you want to hear how this ends. And finally, you end up seeing a pipe organ made completely of chocolate, which brings you back to the central point that food was really the driving force of the sequel. Whew, that was less than 2.5 hours. That only took me about an hour and 10 minutes to describe that entire sequel. Yep. So I hope that satisfies your need. And now I need to get a drink of water because I can barely talk.
I'm going to blow your mind.
Yeah. Was I right?
You just described the sequel shot for shot.
I felt like I was really close.
Down to Roy Scheider's 8-minute operatic interlude.
Yeah.
Like, that was absolutely correct.
All right. Well, I'm a little surprised because I thought I went off the rails a few times, but maybe I
Well,
saw it. Maybe when I saw it, it stuck with me more than I remembered. I just have
It was
an
wild.
amazing memory.
It went way off of the books.
Yeah.
But, it's you take artistic license like that.
I still thought it was so
wasn't...
weird that, like, so you're saying that they actually, back when they made 2010, whenever that was, they included Hugh Jackman as Wolverine back then?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that was his introduction.
See, that part I just threw in as a
role.
joke, but it's just like, it's so funny that they somehow were able to get that done. Now that's special effects.
Now, he didn't have the adamantium clause yet.
Right,
This was
right.
This
the
was
bone claws,
pre.
of course.
Yeah. But yeah, it's wow. I'm really surprised that you.
I feel like
described that so accurately.
I feel like I can't do anything else better in this episode, or maybe the rest of my life.
No, we're going to go out on a high note here. That's our show, everyone.
Forever.
Thanks so much for listening. Well, it may be your show forever. I might continue this show on without you, but
good luck figuring out the next sequel to 2010.
Yeah. You're going to join us every Monday as we distill another favorite from our past. We are going to continue this little spacefaring train probably through the end of January. We have some pretty cool ideas for movies to do. If you have any cool ideas, John's going to tell you here in a moment how to get those to us if you are interested in sponsoring the show financially, so that we can make cool content and upgrade our equipment and make our voices sound so dulcet and delicious. Head on over to anchor.fm/thememorydistillery/support. Again, that is anchor.fm/thememorydistillery/support. If you forget what that is, just go into your podcast app, click on the description of our show, and the link will be at the bottom. And you can donate monthly and give us that sweet, sweet, sweet bread so that we can, make this show great.
Speaking of things that make the show great, the music, believe it or not. I'm afraid you can't do that, Dave.
Uh-oh.
I'm falling apart. No. Speaking of whatever you just said a minute ago that I've already forgotten, the music in our podcast is actually all just classical music. Like, we hired Alex North to do our theme song, and instead we ended up thinking, let's throw in a little Blue Danube, or let's throw in a little also Sprach Zarathustra. And so that's what we did. And then out of nowhere, Semaphore is like, yeah, but listen to Destroying the Evidence. Bam, they put it on, and history was made. So we
blew our fucking minds.
Yeah, we used them instead. Please go listen to them and tell them the Memory Distillery sent you, and you'll get a coupon probably for ice cream. And those things Anthony was talking about earlier, because he probably mentioned something about getting in contact with us. Again, I wasn't listening. I was watching YouTube as he was talking. YouTube's a service that you can watch videos almost for free online. It's great. But they're not sponsoring us, so I'm not going to get into that. I'll just say you all should email us at thememorydistillery@gmail.com if you want to talk about your favorite movies that take place in space. If you want to give us some ideas of more themes to dig into this year. We've had a few people reaching out here through Facebook at the Memory Distillery Facebook fan page, just talking about where we can go, what things could be awesome to do, and we're really open to your feedback on that front. You can also tweet us at TMDPod, or that's our Instagram handle. We're just all over the place. But we're going to have a great year here. We have a lot of cool things lined up, but there's a lot of open spots that we're still going to program out later, and we love original ideas. So if you got any, send them our way, because Anthony's not going to come up with anything. Am I right?
Oh, God, no.
So on that note, once again, I, as Alfred/Bane/Batman, as Hell 9000, wanted to let you know I am John Day.
And I'm Anthony Venari, and this has been the Memory Distillery.
Marshall Bruce.
Master Wayne.
Arm. for a tea, Batman.
I don't know what character that is supposed to be.
Haven't you ever seen Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins?
I have. Is that who you're supposed to be?
No.
Not a Batman character at all? Just
I feel like
the pipe, the chimney sweep?
Just pie the pipe chimney sweep. Play that sweet music and take us out, because we just did Nirvana.
Goodbye, everybody.